Hi everyone, welcome to the second last one of these videos. I think will be about the number we need. Today what we're going to be covering is the last structural element that you really need to know to be able to construct a website, which is a thing called Flexboxes. So Flexboxes are very similar to grids. The main difference between a flexbox and a grid is that the layout itself is more flexible. So with a grid, you have clearly defined items that column widths and that sort of thing. So when an item wraps around in a responsive layout, so when the size of the screen changes, what happens is it wraps around and basically follows the size of the column. Whereas in a flexbox, what happens is that it wraps around, but it doesn't create that structured column width, which is sometimes useful in certain circumstances. And flexboxes in some cases can be used interchangeably with a CSS grid. Okay, but that's the main thing that is different about them. Okay, so we'll start by setting up a flexbox. So I'm going to start by putting a boilerplate setup for a web page, and then the next thing we want to do is we want to create a division, and I'm going to call this class Flexbox. So this is the outer container for a Flexbox. Okay, so we have our outer container, and within that Flexbox we can have other containers. So I'm going to start with two different ones. Okay, and we'll call this one text 1, and the second one we'll call text 2. Okay, and we need to give classes to these things to be able to set the styles. So let's call that text 1, and we'll give this other one a class as well. Okay, so we've got our two basic flex boxes. Now to be able to see what's going on, what I'm going to do is I've done with other videos is I'm going to give them some background colors. So we need text 1, and we're going to give that a background color. Let's see. Sorry, that's why it's not changing color. I can put a style tag in. Okay, so get this all formatted. Background. Okay, so we're going to background color. Sorry about that. And let's just make it light something, light blue. And then we've got our second text box that we want to basically have a different color, so we can just see what's going on. So let's do light gray. So we've got light gray and light blue. Okay, so if we save that, and then we can open it up on the site, what you'll see is that you've got two text boxes, one after another, in a line looking downwards. Okay, so that is before we've done anything. Now the first thing we want to do is we want to start to convert this into a flexbox, and we can do that using the display setting. So what we're doing Flexbox. Need a dot in front of that too. Okay, and we're going to display. Okay, and so to create a Flexbox, you can write, just need to write flex, okay, and then that has created the Flexbox, okay, and its behaviors flow from even though you're setting it for the div here, it flows into these two divs there as well. Okay, now the second thing we might want to do is, if we have a look at the screen now, it's put it side by side, but we can also set it any way we like. So we can set it in either direction. The way we do that is using a thing called flex direction. And we can either go for row or column. So in this case, I'm going to set row, but if I was to set columns, what we're going to do is get them on top of each other. So you can have flex boxes moving up and down the screen or left to right. So I'm going to set it back to row. Okay, and the other thing that we may want to consider to do is whether we allow these flex boxes to wrap around the screen. So if we do that, we need flex wrap, and then it allows you to have no wrap, wrap, or reverse wrap. Okay, if we save that, you won't see any changes there because there's no need for it to wrap around the screen. But now if I add a few more of these elements into the div, so we're creating more items or elements within the div, and we'll create maybe 6 of them. And let's say we set the width of them to, let's say, 300 pixels. Okay, so this is all the text 2 boxes, and let's say to show, we'll set the other ones at 200. Now the reason I'm doing that is because it'll show you the characteristics that make Flexboxes distinct from grids. So if I save that, we go back to our screen, we've got our text, and what you'll see is we're wrapping around, and that's fine. And at this point, it just looks just like a grid would, in that it's taken up as much space as it can, and then it's wrapped around. Now, if we do an inspection, though, we'll start to see some of the properties associated with this. So now, if we do a responsive, you'll see that now, in this layout now, you'll see that the grids are not on the second row, are not lining up. And this is where a Flexbox, and the same here, they're not lining up to the same width. So that's the primary difference between a Flexbox and a grid. So in a grid, you would always get this sort of appearance, whereas a Flexbox, you can get different elements going back and forth. Okay, so pretty much what you can, so that's pretty much how it works. Now, a couple of the properties that you are quite important to know, so I'm just going to remove these again, is one of the properties is called flex. Okay, and what flex with a number, so what flex does is it's the equivalent of 1FR in a grid box. So what it will do is it will stretch and take the remaining available space in a line. And so if we do a responsive layout again, what happens is it just takes up whatever's left over until such time as it runs out of space. Okay, and you'll see it wrap around, and again you see that property coming through of them being different widths. Okay, and that's basically how that works. Now, in terms of if you have more than one element that has that flex that flex number set, it works the same way as 1FR in the previous one, which is it's a ratio. So if we had three elements set up with three elements within here, and they all had flex 1, they would take up a third each of the screen. And if one of them was set to 2, that would mean that the two that would mean that there would be 4 values of flex in total, so 2 in one of the elements and then 1 in the others, and that would mean that it would take half the available space, and the remaining 2 elements would take a little bit more. So we might show you what we mean just so it's clear. So if I set the other text box and I set it to flex 1 as well, okay, and save it and have a look at the screen, the responsive, they're taking half the space that's available each. Oh, hang on, this hasn't updated. Something's not gone wrong. Save. This hasn't updated properly. It's because I've got the width set as well, I think. Pre-record.